So one of my students, Cheen, asked me in one of my lessons recently, what do you see as being my trajectory as a guitarist? And really what he was kind of asking is, how long is it going to take to learn the stuff that I'm working on? It's a question that I'm hesitating a lot more to answer for my students lately, because the question nobody asks is, if I tell you what your future is as a guitarist, is that going to change it? So Werner Heisenberg is driving down the highway and a cop pulls him over for speeding and... Wait, no, I shouldn't tell this now. I'll finish the joke at the end.
Questions nobody asks. With a John Michael Swiftner. What, was that bad?
It's extremely common when you start working on something challenging as a guitarist to really be like, oh my god, how long is this going to take? And it's legitimately a good question to ask, because if you're going to go on a journey, you want to make sure you stock up enough gas and everything. The main problem with asking this question is that in one level, the human brain doesn't always distinguish between dreams and reality. And when we think this way about certain problems, it actually can change the outcome of how we do on them. I remember one time I was taking lessons with an Indian musician, and I was asking him, well, how long does it learn to take a raga, or what's the process? And I remember he kind of laid it all out for me, and I remember I felt this kind of keen sense of satisfaction. I'm like, I think I can do that. And then I proceeded to never practice any of the stuff he told me. And when I think about it, the amount of time it would take to actually go through that process is quite substantial, but it's almost like knowing it almost made me feel like I did it when in fact it didn't do anything. Now, in America, this concept of positive visualization, visualizing success, leading to success, is very popular, especially since the release of the DVD known as The Secret, and the book as well. The Secret is essentially propounding a new age philosophy that if you visualize success, you're more likely to become successful. And to a certain degree, I actually do prescribe to that, and there are many very successful people who do. However, I think there's a very important catch to it. Despite the immense popularity of The Secret, it's kind of funny that we don't already have a perfect society. Let's say you want to take a car trip somewhere. Some places you want to go might be off-road. The road is not really a beaten path yet. Some roads are beaten paths because lots of people have gone over them. And some places people go so often that they paved the road to make it easier to drive on. In any of those cases, the most important thing is just stocking enough fuel for the journey. And part of the problem is that in our society, we have such a bad conceptualization of our mental energy, of our mental fuel, that we have no idea if we're actually preparing for success or failure in most cases. And a lot of recent research is showing that visualizing success is actually sabotaging you or making you more likely to do things inconsistent with your long-term goals. Now, to be fair, we all know people who are so depressed about their ability to accomplish anything that they don't do anything. And so, realistically, you can't just be all negative about what you're going for either. We all know there are plenty of success stories of people who visualized themselves getting someplace very specific and getting there. But there are also a lot of recent studies showing that when you have a particular goal, like you're doing a diet or an exercise routine, that actually imagining the ways that you could fail actually makes you more likely to succeed. This reminds me a lot of something I read about in the book called The Talent Code by Martin Coyle, which showed that the most productive talent creating environments actually were very poorly designed facilities in a lot of ways, or that they lacked a lot of resources. He's talking about tennis camps in Russia, like the ones that turned out Anna Kournikova and stuff like that, where they didn't have most of the equipment they needed. They were dirty, their things were falling apart. And it talks about this concept of a primal cue, that the discomfort caused by that environment actually motivates you, because on a subconscious level, what that tells you is, if I don't do well, I'm going to be stuck in this crappy environment forever. And that's actually shown to increase long-term motivation in a very important way. So in my mind, the importance is balancing this concept of relaxation versus tension. It's very much like what happens in other kinds of music, where, people say music is about tension and release. I really think succeeding at goals is very much the same thing. It's all about using visualization techniques to create a balance. The technique I'm going to be working on over the next couple of weeks to apply to my goals is called WOOP. WOOP. You can read about it more by the links in the description box below. I've included a bunch of other research too. So WOOP is actually an acronym for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, Plan. And this is a very concise way of putting together both positive and negative visualization, because positive visualization is going to help you hone in on the specific things that you need and kind of get the extra stuff out of the way. But negative visualization, actually, it both motivates you to not sit around on your butt all day, and it also helps you figure out where you might fail and to prevent those failures from happening in advance. So you got to realize that on some level, every desire you have comes from a wish or a question on some level. And there's more than one way often to realize your desires or to get the experience you want. So understanding that fundamental wish, what is it that's actually going to make me happy, is really going to help you understand, well, I don't have to have exactly this thing or exactly this thing. There's maybe more than one way to satisfy your desire. So if you're open to multiple possibilities, you're more likely to be able to reach something, feasible for your circumstances. Now, the outcome step helps you imagine specifically, all right, what's the best way that I know of right now to get to the goal that I'm looking for? And that helps you make choices between things that may or may not be constructive towards your goal. And it does give you a sense of tangibility about the goal. The idea that, if you can picture it in your mind, then you can also imagine it being a part of reality too. And that is a key piece of motivation. The next step is a really key one, because the problem with positive visualization is it stimulates a relaxation response. It's the dream reality thing. When you feel like you're visualizing success, you feel like you've already done it when you haven't done anything. So the obstacle is where you snap yourself out of that and you say, okay, I really have to take action. And you visualize failure to make yourself realize, this isn't real yet. If I don't work, I'll get it. So you kind of hike your energy up, your action up, but you also kind of reverse hack yourself. It's kind of like hackers working for security companies to figure out where the security holes are so that real hackers don't get in. So you do that exactly the same way with yourself, with whatever problem you're facing, to make sure that you don't fall into predictable pitfalls. And then the plan just keeps you organized and keeps you motivated. You look at the possibilities of what you do need to do. What's the next step? And you just keep yourself moving towards your goal. So how does this all relate to the Heisenberg Uncertainty Principle that I mentioned at the beginning? Well, for those of you who don't know, Werner Heisenberg was a theoretical physicist who famously stated the idea that you can know either the position or the momentum of a quantum particle, but not necessarily both. And it's funny because this is related to what's called an observer effect, and that when you think of like a tiny little electron orbiting an atom, it's just this teeny tiny little thing. And in order to, quote, observe it, you have to bounce something off of it. By bouncing a photon off of it so it can reach whatever you're observing it with, you have to change it by definition. The important thing to realize is that your thoughts are very much like this. Sometimes the facts of how our mind reacts to life is a bit counterintuitive, but you do have to realize there is an observer effect going on with everything going on in your mind. And so your ability to use your own mind, to use your own reflective capacities to get yourself closer to where you want to go, that's really important, because imagining your future one way or another actually does change what it is to a great degree. So really what I'm learning these days is that it's all about the balance. It's all about the yin and the yang. You want to feel positive about your goals. You want to believe that they're possible, and you want to have optimism, but you also want to crunch yourself a little bit and realize, I'm not there yet. Not so much that you just crush yourself or stress yourself out, but enough that you're up off your butt doing stuff to move in that right direction. I've included a bunch of research on the stuff I've looked into about this below. Feel free to read more, post comments, talk to people. And if you think this is interesting, share it with folks. I think these ideas are really cool and really important in our society today. So bounce this around to some friends if you think it would be helpful to them. So Werner Heisenberg is driving down the highway and he gets pulled over for speeding. And the police officer asks him, "Do you know how fast you were going back there?" And Heisenberg says, "Well, no, but I know exactly where I was."